Hello, everyone. I'm Pamela Marshall at the Wellness Radio TV and at the Wellness Radio TV podcast. On this episode of Seeing with the Heart, I am just thrilled to welcome a couple of very talented young people in our community who are focusing on something that is so critical for all of us, whether we're there yet or not. We all know an elderly person, and they have been involved with a project that is exploring music as a healing process for the elderly. Sydni Solomon, who is an up and coming sophomore in college this year, but she spent a summer singing to elderly people and then wrote a play. And Alan McBride is a sophomore, and he's a part of this production, playing the psychiatrist in Healing Lucille. You all, thank you so much for joining us so that we can talk about this production that's coming up. And, well, you know, you're working with elderly people and then you do something that's very mature acting. Like you wrote a play, but you wrote a radio play, Sydney.
Yes.
That's
Basically,
amazing.
yeah. First of all, thank you for having us. And basically, at my first year in CCM, one of the first shows I was cast
Tell
in was
everybody
a
what
radio.
that is, what that is,
So a
TCM.
radio play is just like
No,
your
no, no, no,
normal.
no. Where are you
Oh,
in college?
okay. I'm at the University of Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music studying for my BFA in acting.
Okay.
And at my time in my first year there, obviously we had COVID, so we had so many restrictions as to what we could do and what we couldn't do. So one of my bigger projects was a radio play entitled The Missing, directed by Brant Russell, and it was just this really, really amazing project about African American women and children who went missing. And that
Mm.
really inspired me because it was something I've never done before. It was acting without the visual elements of acting. So I couldn't rely on my face to tell the story. I couldn't rely on my body to tell the story. It was solely my voice. And so that inspired me to later go on and write Healing Lucille. And I was just really in love with music therapy in my time singing. It was something that felt so liberating to use my voice and watch how it affected the patients. And it made me want to learn more about it. And that's how Healing Lucille came to be.
So how did you start singing to elderly people?
So my best friend Christina Dormant, she was going to vocal training with Emily Lopez at the Academy of Music and Art. And Emily Lopez over there, she was doing a tour of singing in the different nursing homes to raise money with community hospice and palliative care. And from there, they were looking for more students to sing with them. And so Christina asked me to join them on this tour. So I'd go to rehearsals in the day, and then later on, I would go to the different nursing homes that they had. And then it concluded with a benefit concert, and all the money went to community hospice and palliative care.
So Sydney, and you watching this, at what point do you start thinking about the impact of singing to elderly people and how it was helping them?
There was this one concert that I did, and this lady came up to me afterwards, this sweet old lady. She was the cutest person ever. And she looked me in the eyes and she told me of her days as an opera singer from when she was my age. And she was just like, "Oh, back in my day, I was an opera singer and I could sing as a soprano." And she was just bragging about all this amazing opportunity she had as an opera singer. And it was just the way her face lit up as she told me this story. And just, she's like, "I see so much of you in myself." And that was just talking to her was just such an amazing experience. And, I remember singing Who's Sorry Now by Connie Francis, and the way some of those elderly patients, they knew that song and they were singing along. And I could just see a change in their body language. I could see that sparkle in their eyes. And it just meant the world to me, especially because I was about to start applying for colleges. And it helped me figure out what I wanted to do in my life. So, I really owe it to those patients and I owe it to everyone who was part of that process.
Sydney Solomon and Ellen McBride, a part of a performance that's coming up on the 29th of May, 29th, on our good friend Carol Velasquez Richardson's radio station, WUBA 88.1 FM. And then it's going to be available on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Music on May 30th. Also, you're doing a drive in at the Cotton Club.
Cotton Club Museum and Cultural Center. Yep.
Tell us about that.
So in back in ye olden days, pre 2020, we used to, when I would direct shows, we used to have these big cast parties at the end of shows. They would be, crazy nuts for those kids because, Alan is one of our older cast members, but we actually have cast from ages, I think, 8, maybe 10, 8 to 22. So our cast is very wide range in age, but normally we'd have a cast party to celebrate all the hard work put in. And, with COVID, that wasn't possible. And I think the most heartbreaking part of this process was realizing that the kids would never get to sit down next to each other and hear themselves on the radio and get excited about it. I was lucky. I was blessed when the trailer first came out. I was with my technical producer, Adrian Feiner, and we just hugged each other and I almost cried. And it was this big, grand thing. And I FaceTimed I FaceTimed Alan and Megan right after that. So I felt really sad that they're just never going to get that experience because of COVID. And I wanted to do something extra special for them. And when I was in Cincinnati, my parents took me to a Belle Biv DeVoe drive-in concert. And, that's, way before my time. It's not something that I listened to back in the day or like, as a child, I never listened to Belle Biv DeVoe, but I was really inspired by what they did. And just, you park your car. It's just like a drive-in movie theater, but you can unwind your windows, you can sit on the hood of your car and just like listen to the music at the concert. And I thought, well, we could do that because actually in the show, original music by Devon Gainey is showcased in the show. So I was like, well, let's get Devon Gainey, Alan, me, let's get Liz Rhodes, let's get Star Center and Caring and Sharing, and let's create this big concert right before the radio play launches. And let's just, let's do a drive-in because that way they can, they can plan it out. Like, oh, let's get here 15 minutes early so we can park our cars next to each other. So it's that way
Mm,
of like, they never got to meet each other in person. Like the cast never
wow.
all 15 of them never got together. All
Wow.
of our rehearsals were over Zoom and we had a max of 3 actors in the room. So there was never a time in which all 15 of them were in the same space. This will be the very first time.
Wow. Well,
Yes.
Alan McBride is
Yes.
playing the psychiatrist in this play of Healing Lucille. And so, you've been in plays before and you
Yes,
have
ma'am.
the opportunity to use your facial expression, your body language, and just a glance at the audience can, say so much.
Yes.
How challenging was it for you to bring this character to life via radio?
I'm not gonna lie to you. It was a little challenging because I'm so used to being like on a stage. It was the first time I was like, in a studio, just for like no one can see anything or hear anything but my voice. So it was definitely a challenge, but not too much of a challenge. My dad is a physician, so um, I kind of learned a little bit from him, like the past couple of years. So I kind of use that from what I've learned from my dad, and I used it whenever I was saying my lines and recording and all that.
So, Sydney, in writing, how different was it for you to write something that you knew the actors and actresses would not be able to use anything except your words and their voices?
Woo! If I could put it in one word, that would be it. Basically, Alan was the easiest one. I always knew that I wanted him to play Dr. Collymore. I always knew that right off the bat. Alan's one of my best friends in this lifetime, and I knew that he could carry my vision through. I've told him so many of my life experiences that he was able to understand what I was talking about to a T. I always knew he was perfect. So it was easy to write for Alan, but every other character in the show was impossible. And when I was writing this, I was actually in my finals weeks. So I was gearing up to get ready to take finals. I was starting to pack up to go home. So there was a lot going on at the time and it was really stressful. And at first it was really easy we have the script itself is 23 pages and the first 5, 6 pages were really easy to write. And then we got stuck at a huge writing block. And it's nothing I've ever experienced. I've written scripts before. This is the first one that's ever going to be released because I've always just been uncomfortable sharing, this vulnerable part of me. And there are some vulnerable moments in my lifetime that are shared in this script. So, I've always been uncomfortable sharing some of my truths to the world. And this is going to be the very first truth that I share. And so I hit a really big writing block. And I ended up contacting one of my professors, which is actually the one who directed the radio play, Brent Russell. And, he actually worked through the script with me using some of the terms we had learned in class and script analysis. And he said, I think the biggest problem is all of your characters want the same thing. And that was just such an interesting thing for me to hear. It's like every character wanted Lucille to get better. And I think, in life, I feel like everyone would, but I also want to see the bright side of everybody. And he suggested, what if you make aphasia a character? Which was really confusing for me because, in a radio play, how are you supposed to know what if, Broca's aphasia is a real illness? And it's like, how do I get that? And he told me right off the bat, this will be very difficult for you because it's a radio play and no one's going to be able to see that. If this were a stage play, this would be easy, but it's not. So then I added aphasia and I was like, I'll fight up with that later, but let's just write aphasia in to get rid of the writer's block. And suddenly this piece became so much clearer to me. That was just the most amazing decision. And, eventually I figured out ways to make it so that way you could tell that it was, aphasia and it was a voice inside the head. And that was a new concept, was having different voices speaking to different characters in their heads. And it was just, we could add sound effects and things like that. And, finding the actor to play aphasia was really difficult. We actually went through, I think, 3 or 4 different actors trying out aphasia before we found the one that I feel like best fit it. And it's my friend Megan, and she's amazing at it. She played with so many different approaches and tactics to the scenes. And, she started out with this comedic villain, and then she was this abrasive, a bully truly. And then she found this beautiful mix of both that you realize she does want a good, she does try to find the benefit of Lucille not talking. And, aphasia's also scared herself. So it was really interesting to see an actual illness that elderly patients do have. Aphasia is very popular in elderly patients, especially ones with Alzheimer's. And it was just interesting to personify that and have a goal and have a fear and, see how the music that we use in the show and music therapy, how that affects the character of aphasia. So it was really interesting to get to work with all these different characters and truly identify their fears. Because even though grandmother Lucille doesn't talk, she talks to aphasia. So you get to see where her mentality is at throughout the show, even though the other characters can't hear what she's saying.
That is amazing.
Yes.
And you're 19 years old. Are you 19 yet?
I'm 19, yes.
You're 19 years old and you're having to bring to life an illness that elderly people have. And Dr. McBride, talk to people about exactly what aphasia is and to make it a character, Sydney. That's amazing.
It was really scary for sure. When Brant told me that, I remember freaking out. I was like, I don't know how this is going to happen. And it had to be the right person too. It's one thing to make the character happen. It's another for somebody to sell it and truly, have this villainous that Megan carries. And that's, I think that contrast, the beautiful thing that I love about the show is the contrast between Dr. Collymore and aphasia and how they go about helping the grandmother. And it's just, to watch them in the rehearsal, to watch every actor in the rehearsal process was amazing. But just to see the character growth between those two characters, and watching them in the trailer, actually, that almost made me cry. And having August Taylor added and his original music, those three they always make me cry consistently because it's just like watching those 3 characters come to life. They were the 3 hardest to create, and watching them come to life is just so beautiful.
So Dr. McBride.
Yes, ma'am.
Not your daddy. Talk about this mental illness. Help people to understand exactly what it is. My mother had Alzheimer's. She had 2 sisters with Alzheimer's. And so it is a part of Alzheimer's or is it not? Does it have to be? Am I asking you too many medical questions? It's like, my daddy's a doctor, not me.
Yeah, I was probably gonna make something up.
I can answer this. So sometimes when you get Alzheimer's, you later on develop aphasia. And aphasia can come from many different things. Alzheimer's is the most popular. So you get Alzheimer's and then you later on develop aphasia. And there's two different types of aphasia. We focus on broca's, which is, there's one that prevents, I think it's called auditory aphasia, but it prevents you from hearing things that people are saying. But then there's broca that prevents you from being able to communicate what you're trying to say. And it gets all messed up. And the whole, plot of the show is that the grandmother, Lucille, wants to tell her grandchildren's a message, but she struggles with that.
Mm.
She struggles to communicate this. And so it takes her listening to music, and familiar music at that, to help her speak. And so that's what's really cool about music therapy in my research, is that music therapy isn't what I did. Music therapy wasn't singing in the nursing homes. Music therapy is using older music that they would remember and maybe changing out some of the lyrics to things like, maybe instead of saying, if it was Valerie by Amy Winehouse, maybe instead of saying Valerie, we'd say Alan, so that way they start remembering their memories with Alan. And it's just like replacing other
Mm.
words to help them remember their relatives and their friends and their families. And I just think it's so beautiful is that they use, we have Devon Gainey wrote original music for this show. Or no, not for this show, but he wrote original, I wish for this show, but he wrote original music, and we put it in the show. And that was really big in the rehearsal process and trying to get it through, is how does this music affect grandmother Lucille? So we would break it down lyric by lyric, and it's like, what does this mean to Lucille? Why does she feel the need to share this with her children? Because if her children know the songs, then it must have had a huge impact in her own life. So it was very great to just share that with them, and really get music therapy across, as it's not just about the singing, it's about the lyrics of the songs, and it's about, that recollection of your old childhood memories.
So Alan, what did you learn in this process? I mean, you guys are uh, just entering into young adulthood, and thinking about Alzheimer's is not high on your agenda. Even Sydney, going to nursing homes, and not a lot of college students have that on as their goal. So kudos to you all for addressing this issue. So, Alan, what was it like for you to bring this doctor and this character to life?
It was definitely a challenge. I definitely had my doubts if I could really bring out the most of this character. And but of course, Sydney helped me through it, and I did learn a lot. Because a lot of these things in this show are from her experiences. And it's just after saying those lines and knowing where they were originated from, it kind of it touched my soul in a way. What I'm trying to say, because it really made me, I don't want to say vibe, but it just it was really emotional, and and yeah, it's just I definitely had my doubts in myself to see if I could really bring this character to life, but I'm so glad that you chose me for it. That Sydney, I'm really glad you chose me for it, and
So,
I hope I did it justice.
You
so
did.
do you think you have become more empathetic to our seniors, the elderly population, as a result of this?
Oh, 100%. Like I you know elderly people, they definitely they go through a lot, and after this show, I really it helped me really. I'm getting so mixed up right now, but it really helped me just see a different side. I guess so. I'm trying
Yeah.
to. Yeah, it
If I
helped
can,
me. Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. If I can add on to that, one of the scenes in the show, it was about music therapy.
Mm.
It was. But as the semester progressed, I'll say I have loved this semester so much. I love the school year. I love my school. But it also, what I love about my school is that it woke me up a little bit. I started seeing the world in a very different way than I had before. When I wrote this show, I realized I've never had a Black doctor in my life. I've had white dentists, I've had white doctors, all my professors are white. So it's like a lot of the people who made me who I am today, who taught me how to brush my teeth, for example, all these people who, the ones who taught me that I had scoliosis, they were all white, which is great, and I give them so much credit. They worked very hard to be where they are. But to see Alan and Devon as Black doctors, and Black male doctors at that, it's rare. One of the lines in the show is, in 2018, only I think 5% of physicians were Black, and you should have learned you do anything to be at the top. That was one of the biggest lines in the show. And I think, we had to pull from some of my own experiences in theater. And one of the lines actually came from me recording myself crying and just living my experiences as they were and just going through it. And, Alan actually saw the video when it happened. I called him when it happened to tell him, what was going on. And that's what I'm saying. A lot of this show carries my vulnerabilities. And so, it was just this beautiful thing of, the show had so many layers. And I think watching Alan's growth in the show as, what does it mean to be a Black doctor? And, he's trying to cure someone who's a white grandmother. And, she was probably born, before segregation and before, segregation ended and all of that. So she might even have her own, we talked about this. We don't know. There's a lot of unknowns of the show, but she could have had racial prejudices against Dr. Collymore. She could wake up and hold resentment towards Dr. Collymore. You never know that. So I think it's just this really beautiful thing to watch two Black male doctors trying to achieve the same goal of healing Lucille, but they go about it two completely different ways. And I've loved watching Alan's journey on that. Yes, music therapy was a big part of it, but he had to also incorporate this racial element of, he's scared. Dr. Collymore is scared that one mess up and he's done with this project. And he just wants, both doctors just want their legacies to last on. They're both really popular doctors in the country. They just want their legacies to carry on beyond them.
And we really see them struggle with that, struggling to try to keep that legacy alive in this play.
And the struggle that you're talking about, because he's working, is there discussion about what they need to prove because this patient is white? So, this started out as about highlighting the importance of music with elderly people, but it sounds like it's incorporating some social kind of issues as well.
It does.
100%.
Was there extra? I'm sorry, Alan, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're fine. I'm good. Go ahead.
Yeah, what I was asking earlier was, is there an extra effort because you're treating a white woman? Was there a need to do something above and beyond because I can't fail this patient?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Especially, because, I'm playing a Black doctor. So, so the struggle is definitely there. It is definitely there. And throughout the play, you can definitely see a lot, or not see a lot, but you can definitely hear a lot that is happening, and a lot of emotion and a lot of the stress that, this doctor that I'm playing is under.
Have you heard that from your father?
No.
Do you think your daddy might have experienced some things, but he just didn't talk about it with his family?
Oh, well, I mean he's definitely, I take that back. He's definitely talked about it. No, he's told me stories. He's definitely been through that before, and he's shared some stories with me. Of course, not all of them. But I think, after this, I might ask him, if there's any more stories that he can give to me so I can learn a little more.
Well, I think that is so important because we hear about segregation and racism in other areas, and we don't get to talk or see very much about the pressures of African Americans who are in the healthcare profession on that end, dealing with racism from patients that they're here that they've taken the Hippocratic Oath to serve and to heal, yet this person may not like you. And Lucille, is there any part of Lucille that we see that does not want this doctor to treat her?
It's interesting you say that because she never says anything against Dr. Collymore. And I think Dr. Collymore does this for Becca and Lila, not for Lucille. The two grandchildren in the show who are also main characters, he does it for them. He takes care of them like they're his own children. And, the beauty of this show is that there's so much mysteries. There's so many what ifs. In the rehearsal process, I had a million questions, and my honest answer was, I don't know. Let's talk about it. Let's fill in the gaps together. And, it's through their acting that everything becomes so clear. But in the script, if you look at it, a lot of things are left very vague and on purpose, because I want each different, if this show were to be replicated, I would want it done completely differently than this cast did it. I want it completely different. So maybe in this show, in our minds, she did hold resentment for Dr. Collymore, but you never get that line. Also, in the script, Grandmother Lucille isn't written to be a white character. It just so happens that our actress is a white female. So it's interesting because it could be done completely differently. The two roles that need to be racially specific are Dr. Collymore and Marcus Taylor, and that's it. Every other role could be played by anybody on this planet, which is just, it's amazing. So, with this show specifically, no, Lucille does not say anything about Dr. Collymore being a Black doctor. But Aphasia actually does kind of imply that with one line. She says, "So now all of a sudden you care about Dr. Collymore?" That's it. That's all you get, and you don't know what that means. We were going through it, and I asked Megan, who was our actress playing Aphasia, "What do you mean by that? Why? That seems kind of like she holds something against Dr. Collymore. She might not like Dr. Collymore. What's the history there?" Because that's a voice in the head, which means, aphasia is essentially a voice inside of Grandmother Lucille's head. So it's like, well, what is Lucille thinking about Dr. Collymore? But you don't know. You don't know. So it's really interesting because I think each version of the show will be completely different. And I think with our show, it was just that, there was this racial divide, or she was maybe uncomfortable having a Black doctor, but never actually said anything out loud.
What is it that you all hope people will learn from this? Because the statistics show that there will be more and more people diagnosed with Alzheimer's. As I said, my mother had Alzheimer's, and she did stop talking. She went from talking to a whisper to not talking at all. And for those of us who have experienced the loss of loved ones with Alzheimer's, there's so much that we go through in losing this person to this dreaded disease. How does radio play, do you think, how do you think this will help all of us be more empathetic to what these patients are going through, who now suffer another layer that does not allow them to communicate?
So for me personally, it's now 2021. There's still a pandemic going on. And I remember when COVID first started, I did my interview with you about how it affected me as a high school senior. But we could have gone on to say, how did it affect senior citizens? In nursing homes, I have a friend who is telling me that he can't see his great grandmother in the nursing home because they're not allowing visitors because of COVID. They're lonely in there. They don't have their families. It's a really, really sad time. And, it's hard to think about the elderly patients who I only really saw once and how they affected my life. And I can't go back and sing to them again. I came back this summer and I can't sing to them again. I can't, volunteer my time to sing a few songs for them. I can't do that. So if I were to, if I were to say one message to the audience members that's not said in the script, go home, leave the show, buy a Hallmark card, write to an elderly patient, mail it off, because they don't have as many people coming to visit them as normal. I remember in middle school we had community service hours, and they gave us a list of suggestions of what to do, and they said read a book to someone in a nursing home. And that was, that stuck with me. I mean, I'm in college now, and I remember that one thing off that community service form. If people did that in middle school, they're not doing it now anymore because of COVID. So it's super important that we write letters to people in nursing homes, send them pictures of anything. I'm sure they just appreciate hearing from people, I guess, on the outside world, which sounds really terrible, but that's what's going on in our world right now. There's so many people who are feeling so alone. And I think, we don't know when this show takes place. That's what I'm saying. There's so many mysteries. But let's say it did take place in 2021. Lucille's alone, and she can't speak. She can't tell her granddaughters anything. She's struggling. She's probably saying a word every 3 weeks. So it's super important that we just, spread our love to everyone in the nursing homes. I would say don't, if you can, donate some money to the community hospice and palliative care, because they're just this amazing organization that helps raise money for music therapy. Donate money if you can. Adrian and I, that's something really big that we do together, is we donate money to different organizations. Right now, the National Black Disability Coalition, but people need our help right now. And I know, everyone in this country faced a major financial downfall with COVID. That's just the truth. But, I feel like personally, I'm more fortunate than others, and there's something I can do to give back. Even if I can say I'm a broke college student, as the popular expression is, I still have theater for me. I'm still going to a college to act and perform. And I had a script analysis class where we learned about how to break down a script. And I can go home, I can come back home, and I can use that to impact a community. There's different ways to help out, and there's different ways to help out elderly patients. And you just have to find your outlet and you have to use it. So maybe for me, it wasn't money. Maybe it was, my organizational skills to form a drive-in concert where we raise money. And maybe it was to write a script. And maybe it was my schmoozing, as Adrian likes to call it, to get different people to help us with this project, to get a technical producer, to get someone to film the trailer, getting all these different people. It takes a village. I actually, when I was in Cincinnati, I did a Zoom call with the Millhopper Montessori Spotlight kids to recruit actors to be in the show, younger, the future, our next generation of actors. And all of the people who were on that Zoom were in this show. So, we all have our own talents, and we just have to figure out how do we use them to help the people of our community.
And Alan, I know it's very important to you as well to donate to this organization. What is it that you hope people will take away from this?
I think Sydney kind of said it all. But all I can say is reach out. Show these elderly people that we are here, that we care, that we are here for them. Because there have been families who have lost their loved ones because of this pandemic that we're under. So even if it's just donating money, even if it's just writing a card, or just paying for their food, getting food for them, just anything to show these people that we care and that they matter to us. And another thing that I can say is that to not make everything a competition. That's the one thing. In this show, there's huge competition between my character and Dr. August. In a monologue that I say, I keep saying how we can't make it a competition. We have to help each other out, because other people are not going to do that. We have to help each other out in this career field, or any career field that anyone has. But nowadays it's just like everything is just, it's a competition. Like, why is it a competition? Like it shouldn't have to be a competition. We should be helping each other out instead of putting each other down. So that's all I can say on that.
I think it's time to rewrite the story. If I, from my journey, something that really bothers me in theater is the limited opportunities for minority groups, for Black females, Black males, the LGBTQ plus community. There are a lack of opportunities. And, that's something that we talk about in class. It's just the reality. And it kind of sucks, because they're like, if you don't like it, you have to help change it. And I think the worst part about that is, what if I don't want to change it? What if I just want the same opportunities as my white counterparts? What if I just want those same opportunities? Well, now I have to, make roles for myself. And that was a big part of this, is that we have to help each other out in this industry. That's one of the lines in the show. And that has nothing to do with being a doctor. When I wrote that had everything to do with being an actor. And that's what I'm saying. It's like, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's not, I could spin the story to making it about a doctor, but in reality, when I said that, it was about being a Black female actor. We have to rewrite the roles, because it's not only that, it's also the roles that we are given are very stereotypical and it doesn't help us. Alan could, go on and be on All American, and he could be from Crenshaw Heights, and, it's a good show. I do love that show. Not saying like I love that show, but what I'm saying is those are the roles that are written for us. We don't get to play the sweet girl next door type roles. Those aren't our roles. Those aren't the ones we're given. You know, I probably, you know, I look like I'm 12, and I think I played more seductive roles than I have the sweet, nice girl. And that's, you know, it's terrible, but truly, those are the racially specific roles we're given. So when I wrote this show, I tried to avoid having races tied to any roles. And eventually it ended up being that Alan and Devon were there. And I just, you know, I'm not a fan of making shows with racially specific roles because I want everyone to be able to play any role.
Gotcha.
That's just my goal. But throughout the
Kudos.
process, I'm like, we can't not talk about the limited opportunities for Black people. We just can't, like, I can't do it because
Yeah.
there aren't enough shows for Black people where Black people are succeeding and doing well. And that was, you know, I wanted Devon and Alan to have these roles where they were doing well as Black people. And, you know, that is, you know, they're both two of the top doctors in the country. That's what they're written to be. And I was totally okay with that. And, you know, that is something I'm okay with. I don't like the fact that there's shows where it's like you have to be a 13-year-old white girl or you have to be a 40-year-old Latinx and you're, you know, you're in a small theater community where it's like, well, only a few of us can play that. And I just, you know, it's hard because I already don't look like an older Black woman. I look like I'm 12, so I look younger than my age is. You know, everyone says I look way younger. So there's a lot of roles that I naturally can't play. I can't play a mom. You know, I can't do any of that quite yet in my lifetime. So it's very hard when you're very limited to certain roles. And, you know, one of the shows that I understudied this semester, there was nothing. There was no racial things, you know, anyone could play any character. We had a non-binary actor playing a female character. Anyone could be anyone. There wasn't anything that prevented that from happening. And I just think that was this amazing thing about that show. And, you know, as a playwright, I would love to stick to that. But for this show specifically, I'm like, we can't not talk about it. It just has to be addressed because that's something so important to me this semester was that we need to rewrite the roles for African Americans. And this was my way of doing it. So, yeah.
And congratulations to you, Sydney.
Thank
The
you.
show Healing Lucille. You can listen to it live on WUBA 88.8 FM, Carol Velasquez Richardson's radio station, as well as on Spotify. May 30th, it will start being available on YouTube and Apple Music and Spotify. Kudos to you all, you're wonderful, gifted young people, young, gifted, and Black. That conversation about the roles that were limited were being had in 1979, my freshman year of college, majoring in theater, and I did not anticipate that 40 years later we would be having the same conversation. But thank you for your efforts to change things, and I'm looking forward to seeing this. And for all of you who are watching that may have elderly people in your life, great piece of advice. Send a card, send a letter, do anything that you can to help brighten the day of those who are not able to be close to their loved ones during this pandemic. And still be careful, wear your mask, and be appropriate so that we can see the rest of this year out and more years to come. Again, I salute you all. Great job. I'm looking forward. Alan McBride, one of the actors in Healing Lucille, plays the doctor, and Sydni Solomon, the playwright for this radio production. Guys and young lady, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I
So
really
good
appreciate
you
you on
all.
here.
And say hello to your mom. Thank you for calling me.
Oh, yeah. Mom, she says hi.
All right. Everybody, thank you for watching Seeing with the Heart. We look forward to you joining us on Thursday for the Timbuktu Report with Dr. Rick Stevenson. Until then, I'm Pamela Marshall at the Wellness Radio TV and at the Wellness Radio TV podcast. Remember, there is healing at the well. You make it a great moment. See you next time.